and welcome to The Storied Human. This is Lynn Thompson. I'm going to do something a little different tonight. I'm doing a short solo episode about one of my favorite books ever. It's a little slim volume called Love is Letting Go of Fear. And I got the Kindle version, which is the third edition. I think it's like $7.99 right now on Amazon. It's well worth getting it because it just has so many simple, wonderful lessons in it. I've returned to this book after many years. I still love it. I just think Dr. Gerald Jampolsky, who wrote it, I just feel like he touched upon basic things that were really unusual. I think he wrote it in 1979, the first edition. The things that he talked about were really different from what I was hearing. I think I found the book in the late 80s, early 90s. I can't remember exactly. And like a lot of wonderful books that I found, I don't remember how I found it. Like nobody told me to read it. I think it was one of those, like you're in the bookstore and it falls down from the, practically, right? It falls down from the shelf. Anyway, I am guided to read certain books. I've noticed that over the years, and I have just treasured this one. And you know how sometimes you wonder, like, was it as good as I thought? You go back to something after a lot of years and you're like, I don't know. This was better than I remembered. And I'm so impressed because now lots of people are talking about the things he was talking about. The idea that you are connected to other people, that you can only control your own mind, that you can cultivate inner peace, that forgiveness leads to that. These are just wonderful ideas and obviously universal because people are touching on them all the time now. But I just love the way he puts things. And I got to tell you, if you read this book, he makes a comment that he had dyslexia as a child. So the print is really big and there's little cartoons here and there to kind of break it up. And he has all these wonderful sayings, like bold-faced sayings. It's just so easy to take in. It's such a loving book. It's such a lovely way to format a book. I just enjoy the actual, like, physical reading of it. So I can't recommend it highly enough. And despite its, very short pages, it's only 136 pages. It's just jam-packed. So I'm only going to touch on a few things. And I'm seriously considering doing another part of this, or even doing a book club if people are interested, because it's just so cool to talk about these things. And it's so fun to move through the book. At the end, he has lessons, which I can't even get to tonight. They're wonderful, so that you can actually apply what he's talking about. Tonight, I'm just going to talk briefly about what it really talks about. So the core principles are about having a willingness to see the world differently, seeing value in letting go of our control issues, judgments, grievances, and making forgiveness as important as breathing. The principles in this book apply to every aspect of our lives, including our relationships with other people and with objects such as money and material things. And he talks at length about how he thought he was doing fine. In his young adult life, he got married, he had 2 kids, he had this nice house. He even bought like a fancy car, and it wasn't working for him. He says, although the world saw me as successful, I was not a very happy camper and my inner life was miserable. I married when I was 29, had 2 sons, and had a marriage that looked great from the outside, but was very challenging from the inside. What was important to me was financial security, how much money I had in the bank, and the kind of house and neighborhood I lived in. What other people thought of me seemed terribly important. I mean, I got to just stop. That I still struggle with that. What other people think of me. I just want to be accepted. I don't want people, to not like me. That is such a big central issue for me. And I wonder if it isn't an issue for a bunch of us, because especially women are raised to please others, to be kind and sweet and never make trouble and don't be angry. God forbid you're angry. And so you grow up trying to please everyone, always keep people happy, which means you suppress a lot of anger. You don't always say what you really mean because you want to get along. It's good to unpack that. I'm starting to do that, but this just hit me like a ton of bricks. What other people thought of me seemed terribly important. He says he was a fault finder to others, but also to himself. Emotionally, he was on a treadmill machine going at high speed, and he was not capable of slowing the machine or stopping it to get off. My ego seemed to have me in a stranglehold, he says. So no matter how much money he made, it was never enough. We always seemed to be spending more than we were making, he says. At one point, I bought a green Austin Healey and had a green hat that went with it. I was sure this would bring me lasting happiness. And of course, that did not happen. He projected his unhappiness onto his wife, and a 20-year marriage ended in a painful divorce. He soon turned to alcohol to hide his pain. He denied he was an alcoholic even after he was stopped by the police for driving under the influence of alcohol. Most of his friends were either heavy drinkers or alcoholics who denied they had an alcohol problem. This is how people cope sometimes. You know, people turn to drugs or alcohol or, sex or pornography or food, whatever people are getting addicted to ease their pain because they are not at peace inside. He says he remembers brief times of happiness, but most of what he remembers was a life where I had little, if any, inner peace, he says. This is so fascinating to me because he says he was 50 years old when he consciously started a spiritual journey. So to me, that's a lot of living before you actually start to look at these spiritual things. And he says, before that, I had no idea how hard I could be on myself or others. The word forgiveness had little meaning. However, he began to slowly but surely see the beneficial effects of being willing to forgive others, and especially himself. He practiced the lessons in A Course in Miracles by Marianne Williamson and Love is Letting Go of Fear, his own book. He began to experience a sense of inner peace that he never had before and that he actually never thought was possible. He began to sense, then believe in, what he calls inner knowing, and that there was a higher power that could, if he was willing, direct his life into a consciousness of love, giving and helping others. His focus on money and material things began to disappear. He was totally absorbed in helping. When he started the first Center for Attitudinal Healing, he began to experience how everyone he met or even thought about was his teacher. And finally, he discovered he could make inner peace as his only goal and forgiveness as his only function. He learned to listen to an inner voice of love, directing what he thought, said, and did. So he realizes that focusing, he totally shifts his focus. And he becomes more loving and more accepting. And he does emphasize forgiveness. That's a big component of moving forward because forgiveness traps you in the past. Lack of forgiveness traps you in the past. If you're not forgiving, then you're held to the past. And I just thought that was fascinating because I'm kind of obsessed with the past. I kind of dwell in the past. Everyone has their thing. So I've been working on that, and I just found that sort of fascinating. Like forgiveness is a big part of this. So Dr. Jampolsky says he's more compassionate and focused now, living in this present moment than doing what he used to do by getting caught in worrying about the fearful future and the fearful past. In general, he's more of a happy camper. He's not trying to change other people or their attitudes. He does his best to be a vehicle of love with everyone and not withhold or exclude his love from anyone, including himself. And he doesn't take himself so seriously. And he takes better care of himself. He exercises regularly. He goes to the gym several times a week. And he says a very profound thing about working with families whose children are facing death. He said that there is another way of looking at living and dying and life and death. They taught him the value of living one day at a time and the great importance of discovering that it is always always possible to have gratitude in one's life. They taught him that it is possible to experience peace of mind even when chaos is going on all around him or in his body. Now, this is like a tall order for me. Like, I am more peaceful than I used to be, and I can sort of stop myself when I get negative or fearful. I always say I still have these thoughts, but I stop myself sooner, which is sort of part of the practice. You're just moving forward. You're a work in progress. So I still have these thoughts. I still judge people. I still, do all these things I'm not proud of, but I tend to stop myself sooner because I'm more aware now. So my main point is that I still find it impossible to believe that in these horrible situations, in these chaotic situations, that you could have peace of mind. I guess you could say that's a goal for me because that's intense. It's like, now I love how he sums up the first 50 years. I just love it. He says, in those first 50 years of my life, I believed there was a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and it was my goal to find that pot of gold. Now I realize that we are the rainbow. The pot of gold is love, and that is what we actually are. I just think that's beautiful. And he also admits that he's flawed. He said, am I always in a blissful spiritual space? Of course not. I am a work in process, and I believe I will be a work in process as long as I remain in this body. Every day there are challenges around judgments of others and myself. I have periods of impatience and irritation and not feeling at peace with myself. What is different now is that those periods are much shorter in duration when I choose to remember that it is only my thoughts and attitudes that can hurt me. I have found this to be true for me. And though I still get upset when I have these judgments and negativity, also just the judgment really kills me because I just go right to it. I think that there was a whole lot of judgment going on in my family and I just absorbed it. So I'm working on that. But again, it's really wonderful to see progress. The progress is not that you get rid of these things. The progress is that you catch them sooner. And that has been a wonderful feeling for me. So this book lays out 3 parts. The first part is preparation for personal transformation. And he talks about all the things involved in preparing yourself to do the lessons that are in part 3. And then part 2 talks about the ingredients of personal transformation. And part 3 are the literal lessons for personal transformation. And the lessons are wonderful. There are 12 of them. And as you work through them, it can be life-changing as you apply what he talks about. And I would love to do that in a group or maybe have a bunch of us in a book club. I would love to work through the lessons together because they're just beautiful. So then he talks about the world today, some of the problems in the world. We have fears about the possibility of nuclear war. We fear global warming. Addiction problems are on the increase. As are physical and sexual abuse, the rate of suicide is increasing. Perhaps the fears at the top of the list for many people are about financial instability and of terrorism. He says, because I am on a spiritual pathway does not mean that there have not been moments when I have had my own fears around money or the harm that could come to me through terrorist activity. When the traumatic events of life happen, some never recover, and people continue to feel bitter, angry, and unhappy the rest of their lives. They continue to scratch their injuries so continuously that their wounds never heal. Others seem able to experience their fearful and bitter emotions, but not get stuck in them, to forgive the past and choose to make their loving relationships more important than money and material things. These people refuse to live in the past. They choose not to worry. They see worry as a waste of time because really worrying doesn't work. Fear can be known as the most virulent and damaging virus known to humankind, he says. Most of the world's belief system of how we communicate with each other and ourselves is based on fear. Let's explore just a few of the beliefs of the world's ego thought system as it is related to money and material things. Our ego's laws are based on the belief that our happiness depends on how much money we have in the bank and how many possessions we own. Its voice of fear bombards us with an attitude of greed. thinking of ourselves first and getting as much as we can and holding on to it. The fear that is the nucleus of our egos gives us an insatiable desire and hunger to consume more and more and more. Our ego's cardinal rule is that nothing is ever enough. For example, our egos can deceive us into believing if we could just have $1 million in the bank, we could have peace of mind for the rest of our lives and we would feel secure. Our fearful ego mind, the king of deception, would then come in with the thought that $1 million is not enough to give me peace of mind and happiness. What I really need is $2 million to feel consistently happy and peaceful. Our egos would not want us to believe that love, peace, and happiness are the enemy. So what generally happens when we follow the belief in the world's fear-based laws around attitudes when there is financial insecurity and we have lost our homes, our jobs, or our retirement savings? Our ego motivates us to believe that we will feel more peaceful and happy if we find someone to blame and direct our anger at. So we develop an attitude that our egos call healthy, which is to have a raging anger at bankers, mortgage loan officers, and politicians. We make up an enemy list in our mind. And when our justified anger does not seem to be enough, we add on to the list our anger at the world, God, and finally ourselves. I related to this so strongly because I definitely have that list. I have a justified anger and I'm always raging. I have to really watch it. I could totally relate to this. I get mad at the system. I get mad at bankers. I get mad at Wall Street. I get mad at politicians. Does it make much difference? No. It really kind of hit me when he talked about this. The trouble is we soon discover that it is just about impossible to experience peace of mind and justified anger at the same time. Just like it's impossible to feel love and fear at the same time. It's impossible. You can't hold those two things at the same time. You either feel love or you feel fear. And fear is related to anger. When I say you feel love or you feel fear, I don't mean that you're cowering in the corner necessarily. You could be like me, and whenever you feel threatened or scared, you think that you have to be strong, and so you get really angry. That's what I do. But that's still a reaction of fear. It's coming from a place of fear. I'm afraid you're going to take something from me. I'm afraid you don't appreciate me. I'm afraid you're going to leave me, whatever the fear is. Instead of being, I'm just one of those people that I don't want to appear weak. I think a lot of people do this. That's why I'm talking about it. So instead, I get really angry and I get strong and powerful. I think that helps or something. I don't even know. Yes, I do know. When I lived alone and I was a smaller woman, I was a petite person and looked younger. I felt like I had to be really strong and independent because people tended to treat me like, a little kid. And so I developed this persona where if I did feel scared or threatened or vulnerable, or if I got offended, God forbid, right? I would just get really angry because there was strength in anger. I didn't want to cry. I wanted to be angry. So, this worked in a way for a while, but it's not ideal because what you do when you go up against someone who's giving you their own fearful response, which could be angry, is you make it a conflict. It's like fear against fear, and it escalates. It doesn't stop. And there's no winner. There's never a winner. If you can learn, and some of the lessons in this book talk about it, if you can learn to transform that interaction, if you can see through someone's anger or the way they're coming at you or talking to you, if you can see that they are afraid or they are unsure or they are human, if you can see that they're coming from a position of fear, then you can choose not to come back with a position of fear. You can choose not to be combative and you can be loving. I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm going to tell you later a story about how I did this. And it was pretty miraculous how quickly this changed the interaction. So it really does work. And I was sort of stunned that I could do it so easily. And he talks about how some people just can't let go of their anger and their bitterness. That's the danger. He's witnessed some people who, when financial insecurity comes their way, continue to feed on their anger and bitterness and lack of trust the rest of their lives. So other people do get past these difficult times. They do get over their anger and their bitterness. They remind themselves with gratitude that the love they have and give to others is the greatest treasure they could have. And it's a treasure that no one can ever take away from them. And he talks about his wife, Diane, and he, when they were guest lecturers on a conference titled The Power of Laughter and Play in Boston, Massachusetts. They were surprised to be met at the airport by two clowns. Gerald started a conversation with the clown next to him and asked him his story about how he became a clown. His story was amazing. He was a 63-year-old businessman who had been quite successful. In 1987, he lost almost everything he had in the economic downturn. He stated that he became depressed and angry at himself, at his poor judgments, and he was always feeling fearful of the future. One day he read in the newspaper there was going to be a night course on clowning to be given at a local college near him. He could not believe it when he found himself signing up for the course. He told Gerald this was the decision that saved his life. He changed his lifestyle, including where he lived. He goes to hospitals and schools and helps children learn how to laugh. He enjoys giving his love to children and making them laugh. And the more he does this, the happier he is. His last words to them were that he never had known he could be that happy. So that's an amazing story of the power of love. And you wonder, that man wouldn't have found it without the downturn, without losing everything. And he took a chance and became a clown. I love that story. Then he talks about a deeper way of looking at scary, dangerous people like terrorists. He makes an argument that terrorists have always been with us from all walks of life. And so far, he doesn't think that anyone has come up with a successful plan that people agree on to rid the world of terrorists. They seem so elusive and hard to find. And he poses this difficult question. Would you consider that the hate, anger, grievances, lack of forgiveness, and murder, either in words or action, seem justified to the persons performing the acts of terrorism? Would you be willing to consider that such decisions are based on fear rather than love? And would you rewind our history and observe that since the beginning of humankind, there has been an amazing amount of fear and terror in one form or another that we have passed along in our teachings from one generation to another? It doesn't excuse the behavior, but to attempt to understand it, I thought that was very moving and important to remember that people who do these acts are acting out of fear. It's extreme anger born from fear. So in general, the ideas in this book can help us heal our minds and our hearts. They can open the door to making all of our decisions based on love rather than fear. They can assist us in committing ourselves to go through each day with the vigorous determination that we will have no thoughts, attitudes, words, or actions that are hurtful to ourselves or others. The lessons in this book are based on the belief that only our own thoughts and attitude create our reality, and that it is only our own thoughts and attitudes that can hurt us or heal us. And this is more prevalent now, this idea, than when I first read the book. In fact, I think we all pretty much have heard this, that it's not the things that happen to you, really, it's how you react to them. You have control over how you react to those things. And they don't really happen to you. We've heard this also, that it's not about you. Most of the time, it isn't about you. And I think that when we think it's about us, then that's when we take offense and get really angry and defensive. And getting defensive means there's a war going on, right? So it just makes whatever happened to you that much more combative. And when it's combative, nobody wins. It's just a very difficult situation. The world that seems so insane, he says, is the result of a belief system that is not working. To perceive the world differently, we must be willing to change our belief system, heal our relationship with our past, and expand our sense of now by releasing the fear in our minds. This changed perception leads to the recognition that we are not separate, but that we have always been joined. It's another powerful sentence. One of the subtitles on my podcast the storied human, is remember who we really are. When we explore our stories and we connect with others, we remember who we really are. We remember our gifts, we remember our humanity, and we start to see that we are more alike than different. But when we are fearful, we isolate ourselves and we feel separate from others. We think of others as just this whole other species, right? But that's a lie. That's an illusion. That's fear's lie. There are many valid ways that lead to transformation and inner peace. And this small book has been written as a primer for those of us who are motivated to experience personal transformation toward a life of giving and love and away from getting and fear. In brief, this is a book about self-fulfillment through giving. We can learn to retrain our minds to have the single goal of peace of mind and the single function of practicing forgiveness. Our fulfillment can come from listening to the voice of our inner teacher. And in doing, we will learn to heal our relationships, experience peace of mind, and let go of fear. It's a lot to swallow, but it's very beautiful. And I think, again, if we practice it, it's in the practicing that we get closer to our goal of feeling that peace of mind and of not responding to fear with fear. So part 1 is called Preparation for Personal Transformation. In the very beginning of this section, he talks about what is real. And I'm going to summarize it because I'm not allowed to read too much of the book to you. Growing up, most of us are taught that reality is what we can observe with our 5 senses. We may at times have a feeling that there might be more to reality, but our culture quickly tells us, no, this narrow view is the right one. There's a real indoctrination that happens when you go to school, when your parents teach you things, when your teachers teach you things, when you see things on TV, when you learn about the world. It seems like it's confirming to you that what you see is reality. We realize at some point that our lives might be more complete and have more meaning if we look to what has no start or ending as our reality. And only love fits that definition of the eternal. It's the absence of fear. Love asks no questions. Its natural state is one of extension and expansion, not comparison and measurement. I heard a saying once that love is the only thing you can give away and always have more. I just thought it was such a beautiful reminder. You can give and give and give love, and you just have more and more and more. Love then, and I'm talking about capital L love, is really everything that is of value, and fear can offer us nothing because it is nothing. Although love is always what we want, we are often afraid of love without consciously knowing it. And so we may act both blind and deaf to love's presence. Yet when we help ourselves and each other let go of fear, we begin to experience a personal transformation. We start to see beyond our old reality as defined by the physical senses, and we enter a state of clarity in which we discover that all minds are joined, that we share a common self, capital S, and that inner peace and love, capital L, are in fact all that are real. With love as our only reality, health and wholeness can be viewed as inner peace, and healing can be seen as letting go of fear. Love, then, is letting go of fear, which is the title of this wonderful book. So there's several lessons from this introduction to part 2, and I'd like to read them to you, and then we'll finish up. 1, peace of mind is our single goal. 2, forgiveness is our single function and the way to achieve our goal of peace of mind. 3, through forgiveness, we can learn not to judge others and to see everyone, including ourselves, as guiltless. 4, we can let go of fear when we stop judging and stop protecting the past, projecting the past into the future, and live only in the now. That's a tall order for me. I'm still working on that one, but it's a beautiful thought. We can learn to accept direction from our inner intuitive voice, which is our guide to knowing. 6, as our inner voice gives us direction, it will also provide the means to accomplishing whatever is necessary. 7, in following one's inner guidance, it is frequently necessary to make a commitment to a specific goal, even when the means for achieving it are not immediately apparent. This is a reversal of the customary logic of the world and can be thought of as putting the cart before the horse. We hear this in lots of different ways now. It's a much more common thought than it used to be. And it's almost like when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It's just that feeling of you can't plan things out the way you think. It's not like you plan everything, dot all your I's, cross all your T's, and then things happen. Sometimes you make a commitment to a goal with your whole heart, and then it happens. So there's a lack of control that some people are uncomfortable with, myself included. Control freak, working on it. Number 8, we do have a choice in determining what we perceive and the feelings we experience. We always have that choice, no matter how bad something is that happened to us or around us or to someone we love. We always have the choice about how we react to it. Through retraining of the mind, we can learn to use positive active imagination. Positive active imagination enables us to develop positive, loving motion pictures in our minds. And he talks during that section about motion pictures. Some of the sayings that he has interspersed in this book are just very powerful. One of my favorites is, other people do not have to change for us to have peace of mind. Other people do not have to change for us to have peace of mind. I wish I had read the book more times between then and now, because I get really hung up on this. I don't know about you guys, but I get really hung up on this. I just insist that someone has to change, and I'm not going to be happy until they do. And I get like all, pissy and resentful, and they have to change. And all it does is hurt me. So I'm working on boundaries, and I'm working on understanding that I have control over me, and I can change me, and I can work on my peace of mind. And other people, it should be a mantra for me. Other people do not have to change for me to have peace of mind. There's also a beautiful statement that I think we could start our days with. I'm going to start doing this in the morning. This day I choose to spend in perfect peace. And another powerful mantra that I personally use, it makes use of the I am, those powerful words that you can start a sentence with. And I just literally say, I am peace. When I meditate or I'm sitting quietly, I say, I am peace. So part 2 is ingredients for personal transformation in the book. And part 3 is the lessons. He has these beautiful lessons, and there are 12 of them, and it could take quite a while to get through them. I'm just going to read them to you, and then we'll be done for this episode. Lesson 1, all that I give is given to myself. Lesson 2, forgiveness is the key to happiness. Lesson 3, I am never upset for the reason I think. Lesson 4, I am determined to see things differently. 5, I can escape from the world I see by giving up attack thoughts. 6, I am not the victim of the world I see. 7, today I will judge nothing that occurs. This would be a difficult day for me, but I can work on it. 8, this instant is the only time there is, to remind us of the eternal now, right? We can't live in the past and can't try to live in the future. This instant is the only time there is. 9, the past is over. It can touch me not. 10, I could see peace instead of this. It's a wonderful reminder. I could see peace instead of this. I can elect to change all thoughts that hurt. And 12, I am responsible for what I see. I just think that's so powerful, because I think a lot of us were raised or kind of fear, felt the fear and ended up kind of passive in situations where we could just be responsible for what we see and not just let things happen to us or be the victim, but be responsible for what we see. His epilogue is very beautiful. Let us consistently choose the single goal of peace rather than multiple goals that lead to conflict. Let us continue to practice forgiveness and to see each other and ourselves as blameless. Let us look lovingly upon the present, for it holds only knowledge that is forever true. Let us continue to be involved in a process of personal transformation in which we are only concerned about giving and not about getting. Let us recognize that we are united as one self and illuminate the world with the light of love that shines through us. Let us awaken to the knowledge that the essence of our being is love, and as such, we are the light of the world. I'm going to include information about ordering his book and also about his Attitudinal Healing International lectures, workshops, centers, and groups. You can get information about them on his website. I just love this book. And I wanted to share one more small example of how I put some of these suggestions into action. Years ago, I went into New York with my niece who was 15 and my daughter who was 8. And we were going to go to the American Girl store. And it was a really exciting day. My niece had even sewn dresses for my daughter and her, and we wore hats, and we just were really into like the warm weather, and the New York is so beautiful when it's sunny, and we were just very excited about going to the American Girl doll place. So I parked parking lot that I knew was close by, that I was familiar with. I'd been there a lot. And I always, when I park, I always have to go to the bathroom. And they have like a half decent bathroom there. It's not great, but it's okay. So I went to the bathroom, I came back out, and we walked the few blocks to the American Girl place. We had a great time. We had lunch. We looked at all the dolls. We saw a show. Inside, they have a little theater. I mean, we just had a blast. So we came, we were really tired. We come back to the parking lot, and they bring my car up, the van. I was driving the van, and they bring this big van up, and the girls, climb in. And one of the parking attendants, or the guy, I think that was behind the desk, he comes running out. He's all angry and upset. And he like practically attacks me. I'm like, what the heck? And he says, "You left the bathroom a mess. What you did to the bathroom, it's disgusting. You have to clean it up." And I just looked at him like, what are you talking about? I mean, literally, I went to pee. I was really fast. I didn't mess up a thing, and I left. It's like I didn't touch anything. I washed my hands and I was out of there. So I didn't know what he was talking about. I was ready to be really angry. Maybe I was a little more careful because the girls were there, and I was protective of them, and I didn't want to start like a fight. But I looked into his eyes, and for a moment I saw that he was fearful. He didn't mean anything personal about me. I knew I hadn't done anything. So I reached out and I touched his hand, and I said, I didn't do anything to the bathroom. I swear I didn't. And I'm really sorry if someone did, but honestly, I didn't. And I just looked at him, and I was like amazed. It diffused the situation. He backed away a little because he was like embarrassed. And he just like nodded his head. I gave him a tip for bringing the car up. I smiled and I said, "Thank you." And off we went. And I have to say, I have never had an interaction like this. Like usually my old self, if someone came up to me that way, I would be very short with them. I would be very offended. I would be, I'd be ready to be angry. Again, I think it might've been because the girls were there and I was like extra careful, but just being a little bit loving and not getting angry back really changed the interaction. I was like amazed. I was like driving home thinking that Gerald Jampolsky stuff really works. That love, letting go of fear. So I'm hoping that you check out the book. I'm hoping I can start some kind of book club. I think it'd be really fun to delve into this or go through the lessons. I hope you have a great night. Thanks for listening to The Storied Human.